Welcome to the program. 400 arrests, that's the tally for the last 24 hours, as police stage an intense crackdown on Occupy Wall Street protests erupting in America. The latest demonstrations spanning the entire country come as the movement marks its 2-month anniversary. With more than 30,000 protesters in New York alone, the day has become a testament to the staying power of the Occupy Wall Street ideals. The movement is, however, facing a synchronized clampdown by local governments and law enforcement agencies. Well, our correspondent, Lucy Kafanoff, brings us the latest now from the Big Apple.
We're standing on the Brooklyn Bridge in New York City, where the Occupy Wall Street protesters are marching on. This is the final and the biggest round of activities that have taken place on November 17th. Now, again, November 17th is the 2-month anniversary of the Occupy Wall Street movement that began right here in New York on September 17th. What began as a small occupation of a small park near Wall Street had turned into a nationwide movement that has, in fact, spread to countries all across the world, from Toronto to Tokyo. Cities all across the globe have embraced in the message that these protesters are putting out, which is the frustration with corporate greed, the control of the political system as they perceive by the few corporate elites, by those with the means of the wealth, and the inability for the average American to essentially put food on the table, to live the middle-class lifestyle. These are some of the demands, some of the frustrations that the protesters here have expressed, and it is what we are seeing spreading across the country. Now, the events in New York City have been tense, filled with extreme tension, many clashes with police officers and the protesters following the raid that took place not only in New York City, but across the country in many of the occupations, from Oakland to Denver to Portland to all kinds of other cities. What we saw this in New York City in the morning was countless protesters, hundreds in fact, take to the streets near Wall Street in an attempt to disrupt businesses there, to disrupt the operation of the financial sector, and they certainly succeeded in doing so. Hundreds of protesters had sat in different corners, blocked off intersections, linked arms to form human chains to get their message heard, to get themselves noticed. They were met with an extremely intense police response. We witnessed many arrests. In fact, 200 or so protesters have been arrested, although we expect the numbers will be much higher once all of the information comes to bear. We had seen, unfortunately, a lot of instances of seemingly unprovoked brutality by the police force. In many cases, the protesters were simply sitting, perhaps standing in an area that's a little bit too close to the sidewalk. They were met with brute force by the police department. Many of them slammed down onto the ground, handcuffed, and physically dragged away. The Occupy Wall Street movement was really thrust into the spotlight following the mass arrests that were witnessed on this very bridge, the Brooklyn Bridge, several weeks ago, where 700 protesters were kettled by police netting and arrested en masse. For the most part, whether or not their message will actually result in policy changes remains to be seen, but they're certainly being heard by the press, by the residents, and by countless Americans all across the United States. Reporting for RT on the Brooklyn Bridge, I'm Lucy Kafanoff.
Lucy Kafanoff is keeping abreast of the latest developments of the anti-Wall Street protests and the police response to them. Well, you can check out her Twitter feed for the most up-to-date information. She's posted video footage showing a protester with his face covered in blood after reportedly being struck with a police baton. She's also uploading pictures as the march evolves, as hundreds of protesters move to Zuccotti Park, the epicenter of the whole Occupy movement. Well, across the whole country, protesters are gathered to show solidarity with the Occupy cause. Some 24 people were arrested in Los Angeles, where several hundred gathered around symbolic tents at the key road intersection. RT's Ramon Galindo went to see the police response firsthand.
Right now, more than 1,000 people are here on the streets of Los Angeles' financial district. We can hear the chants of Occupy USA. Now, from the East Coast to here in Los Angeles, we have seen tons of these demonstrations in solidarity with Occupy Wall Street. And here, the great symbolism. People asking for jobs, asking for the end of homelessness, asking for student debt forgiveness. All of this to show support for those who have been arrested at Occupy demonstrations throughout the country.
To break up this assembly, if you do not do so, you may be arrested or subject to other police action. Other police action may include the use of less lethal munitions, which would cause significant risk of serious injury to those who remain.
Now here, the Occupy movement, along with several worker unions, have shut down streets of downtown Los Angeles, right next to the financial institutions, which many say are to blame for the economic crisis that we are in right now. If you look behind me now, there are dozens and dozens of police officers ready to take people into custody, some of them in riot gear. There are lines and lines of police cars, including a bus, ready to take any sort of demonstrator into custody. Now, the presence here among the protesters has been very heavy. They shut down several streets. Downtown Los Angeles, the financial district, many parts of it have come to a standstill. Now, right now, there are several people practicing civil disobedience, doing sit-down protests, just ready to get arrested in support of the cause. In the end, nearly 24 people were arrested in Los Angeles on this International Day of Action. But despite the arrests, Occupy LA and the movement are not deterred. In Los Angeles, Ramon Galindo, RT.
But it's not only in LA and New York where protests have taken root. In fact, they've sprung up nationwide. And for videos from other cities, you can head to our website. That's rt.com.
Under different pretenses, authorities are kicking protesters out of their occupied locations. Note, public areas.
One of the interesting parts of today, at least for the Occupy DC movement, has been the police presence. There have been just as many officers as protesters. They've been parked at every corner. They have walked with the protesters. And if you take a look here in the Potomac River, there they are. They're waiting.